Interesting. Okay. I spelled it right? Bonbon, not bonbon? Okay. Oh, all right. Okay. Anybody else? Let's see. I got yummy and fulfilling. Bonbon. Heather, would you like to maybe offer another one?
Use an adjective or just a word?
Just a, well, adjective would be a word that describes, but if you have another word, then please, by all means.
We'll just say good.
Good. I'll take good. Thank you.
Great.
It tastes
Yeah.
great. Orange. Aren't you glad you winning?
Let's see, we have soft, delicious, flavorful, juicy, sweet, yummy. Can I offer one? How about chewy? Were they chewy?
Yeah. Gummy.
Gummy. Thank you.
Kind of like the name.
Yeah.
Good, grape, orange, bonbon, fulfilling. May I add another?
Yes.
Yes. How about small? Because they weren't very big bites. What do you think? Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Tasty.
That's a real word answer.
What about colorful?
Colorful. Thank you. Is this a good list? Do you think? Does anyone have anything else that they want to add?
It has a sour taste to it.
There's a bit of a sour taste to it too.
Choking.
Harsh.
Choking and harsh. Thank you very much for your input. It is interesting that just one piece of candy has been described with so many different words, right? It is a great example of how we each view life from our own perspective. It's not right or wrong by any stretch of the means, but it is ours, and it comes from our collective years of experience and interactions. A perfect example is Broussard's French that's up there, right? That comes from his background, his interactions. Communication is no different. Our historical perspective of communication and our culture is often the root of our communication challenges. So in other words, our community that we were raised in helps shape the way we understand the world. Depending on that community experience, we may have different attitudes towards conflict, how we approach tasks or make decisions. We may be open to discussions of emotions, or we may disclose very little about our personal thoughts and feelings. The classic example, my husband is a stoic man. He doesn't talk about his feelings very much, but we do have 2 boys, and I'm really big on getting them to communicate, talk about their feelings. Our oldest, he struggles with talking about his feelings and his anxiety, and he has a lot of anxiety. So at bedtime, we've really instilled in him that, how was your day? What went on? Did you struggle with something today? Talk to us, buddy. And that gives him that one-on-one time with mom or dad, to where he can really communicate very well with us about his feelings about the day and any kind of stresses he had at that time. So I'm trying to shape him into that men don't have to be non-communicative about their feelings kind of perception that my husband grew up with. So that's something that we're trying in our family.
I guess men don't cry, though.
Right, exactly.
They take out garbage.
They take out the garbage instead. Well done.
That's when we cry. I'll buy the garbage can.
That's why they take out the garbage.
Or is that when you cry? When you take out the garbage can?
You go out there, can.
You have a moment when you go out there?
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna have to follow more closely now when my son takes out the garbage can. We may hold biases, prejudices, fears, or misconceptions about others that keep us from seeing their value. Each of these patterns creates an opportunity to open or close the lines of communication between us. However, the more knowledge and understanding we gain, the more positioned we are to communicate effectively, broaden our personal perspective, and appreciate and respect the perspective of others. So now I'm going to ask you guys, I would like you to identify what would hold us back from communicating better with each other.
Fear.
Fear.
Just one word?
Yeah. I mean, if you have more, please let them flow, but go ahead.
Yeah. Not being able to express your feelings.
Oh, okay.
Lack of the feeling.
So, not being able to express your feelings. Okay.
Maybe no expression.
Do you mind if I shorten it to just feel? Do we know what we're talking about? Okay. Intimidated.
Lack of trust.
Thank you. May I offer one? What about, I keep going, I'm sorry, this is such an excellent point, I keep going back to this. I should have said it was an excellent point, I just realized that.
It looks like that's the bold one. You have it on bold point.
I what?
It looks like you have it on the bold print.
But I don't, I really don't, and I really shouldn't, all of you have given really excellent words. Please don't think that I'm favoring Busari, and I don't want you to shut down, so please keep talking. But I keep going back to the different language that you used, so maybe there's a language barrier. Do you think that would be an answer that we could put up here?
Yes, definitely.
And I'm sorry if my back is to you. It's just that I'm on this side of the paper now and I'm right-handed.
Assumptions.
Assumptions, thank you.
Being interrupt.
Interruptions? Matt?
Expectations.
Expectations? You guys are talking. Handwriting is suffering this time, you guys. Thanks. Anyone else? Fear.
Knowledge.
Knowledge? Thank you. May I offer? Preconceived notions? Or biases? I'll put biases, if that's okay.
Lack of listening.
Thank you.
Body language.
Body language.
Negative feedback.
May I go back to the body language real quick? Heather, what would someone's body language make you feel about trying to communicate with them?
If they're like kind of like a standoffish, it makes me wonder do I even bother talking to them? Are they open to talk to me?
Or sometimes when someone's very busy and you really need to ask them something, you might feel intimidated by asking them because you don't want to interrupt what they're doing.
Makes me think of, in the 90s, was it Talk to the Hand?
Oh, yeah. Right? Does anyone else have any more words to add to this list of what would prevent us from communicating? Interruptions, assumptions, expectations, knowledge, language barriers. Time, thank you. Do you think we could get 3 more on there?
Maybe ego.
Ego?
Yeah. Maybe ego.
It's good.
Ego. Challenge accepted. Let's see, fear, not being able to express the feelings, intimidation, lack of trust, language barriers, lack of listening, body language, negative feedback, time, egos.
I don't know if arrogance would be ego, but, you know.
That's okay, we'll take that, thank you, thank you. I think we can get that on there.
Perception. Perception.
Perception, I'm sorry, perception. Pretty big list. I want to thank you guys for participating. As a group, we'll be using this list during the next lesson to develop guidelines that will help increase the effectiveness of our communication. This list is going to be transcribed and ready for distribution to the group within the next 2 to 3 days. I had already previously asked Heather if she would do this for me, and she agreed, so thank you. So I would like for you guys to come prepared for the next lesson for a discussion on ways we can decrease each of those barriers. I would like you to use page 39 in your ACT Formula Participant Guide to record your ideas. So, for example, fear. That is something that is a barrier for you to communicate. And then to reduce the fear of receiving a negative response for interrupting someone by asking them a question, you can come to them and say, I have a question for you. Is it a good time? Or should I come back in 10 minutes? Or I know how important this order is and I want to place it correctly. Do you have a minute to review the process with me? Those could be ways to decrease the fear that you're feeling that holds you back from communicating. Could we do an example together? Would that be okay? Yeah? So how about knowledge? What would knowledge, how would we have a solution to reduce the fear of communicating by a solution for knowledge? What do you think?
Okay. I don't know if I really understand this, but I think of knowledge, we kind of be thinking of, if I'm talking to you, maybe the subject or whatever we're talking about, you don't know what it is or something like that, so I should give you the knowledge that can explain it to you, or have you on the same level as myself, so we can keep on.
Right, that would be a good solution. Did everybody hear that? What the sorry solution was? So what I'm hearing you say is that it would be to clarify or probe for more questioning if you don't understand something. Did I capture that correctly?
I think too, the transparency and openness, if you're in a situation where you don't have the knowledge needed, are you willing to share? Because I think that's tough sometimes. You know, you want to say yes, and you want to maybe not ask the question or try to get more clarification. Well, what exactly do you mean? Or, well, hey, I'm not real familiar with this situation. Can you help me better So it's like a two-way thing, you know, that if you don't know, rather than just saying okay, you ask and try to get more knowledge, you know, or get more knowledgeable so that you can get a clear, you know, correct answer.
So, I'm gonna veer off of this just for a second and kind of bring you guys back to Busari's in my world. So, communication is really difficult for a lot of the participants that we serve. And knowing just a little bit about what we do, we work with people with intellectual disabilities. Can you come up with maybe some ideas of what would their limits of their communication be? And Busari, please help them join in, since you're kind of the expert in the audience.
Maybe a good start is like giving them less information.
Yeah.
Short instruction. Come, instead of I need you here, or they say come, short word.
Anyone else want to help think outside the box for it?
Right, they have a harder time learning, sometimes making sure you have visual aids to assist in learning, because sometimes people learn quicker by seeing the action.
Maybe connecting it to something that you know that they know. You know, so there's that correlation between something they're familiar with and what you're trying to communicate.
Those are some pretty good examples. Go ahead, Busari.
No, I say they got it.
I think so too, yeah, I agree. How about, let's flip it now. You guys are in the recycling business. So have you thought about what some of the limits are for communicating to your customers?
Sure. You know, one of the things that we try to do is not make assumptions. You know, because being in the business, you're familiar with a lot of the products and the terms. You know, just some of the terms in general are not known outside of that.
Right.
You know, so trying to break down and provide guides to give details. You know, when I say cold mingled, what does that mean to you?
Right.
You know, so in our world it means a certain thing, and in general definition it could mean something else. So. Yes,
that's true. I have a friend in the in our field. We have a lot of acronyms so like IDD stands for intellectual disabilities or delays. We have ODP, Office of Developmental Programs. So I have a friend who calls it alphabet soup. You get lost in the alphabet soup of things. So one thing like participant means a person that we serve for us, but participant can mean something different for you guys. So that could be definitely a good barrier. It's not a good barrier, but that could be a barrier between working with your consumers, your participants. Okay. I would also like to ask you guys to further prepare for the next lesson by reading the supplemental readings. So if we could, please, if I could have a volunteer for, be available under cultivating a common ground mindset. Bonnie.
Choose to spend some time with others. Common ground must be discovered, and that takes time. Plan for intentional opportunities in your workplace to help employees connect with each other beyond their work assignments. Employee-focused bulletin boards, lunch and learns, where employees share a talent/skill, etc.
Okay, this time, pay attention to others. What are their needs? Listening requires some giving up on our favorite human pastime. Involvement is ourself and our own self-interest. Sonia Hamlet.
Ask questions. St. Francis of Assisi said, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Ask why, how, when. Be curious. Common ground will surface when you show that you are interested in understanding why others think and feel as they do."
Be thoughtful. Think of others and look for ways to thank them. Be open. Create an environment where employees are excited and willing to share. Be likable. People don't care what you know until they know you care.
Be humble. Alan Ross says, humility means knowing and using your strength for the benefit of others on behalf of a higher purpose. Put your focus on others, affirm them, empower and enable them, allow them to shine, and they will accomplish great things. Don't be afraid to admit weaknesses and be patient with others' weaknesses. Focus primarily on each other's strengths, and that is what will lead the way.
I'm just sorry, that last one, please, be adapted.
Yeah, that, show you are willing to learn new things and to listen to new ideas.
Thank you. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and you're noticing that they are humble, that they are showing that they're willing to listen to what it is that you're saying, so they're being adaptable, you're talking to them that they're not following through on something, you're trying to teach them something new, a new skill, how do you think that communication flow is going to go? Do you think it's going to be brief and done and you're going to feel terrible about it? Do you think it'll extend? I'm talking too much. How do you think that's going to go?
I think that it will probably go, if they're humble and they're listening, it makes you that much more engaged to share information with them. That you like, oh, this person is absorbing what I'm saying, so it makes me want to make sure that I clearly tell them what I want to tell them, because they have their listening ears on.
Anyone else?
I mean, like you said, I really extend it. It's not going to be short because of their input. They might be asking more questions or something like that, so we take off.
Do you guys find that any of these barriers are challenges for you? Personally? Professionally?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. I think I would like to say, if I could, probably I have hit every single one of these barriers in my time
I definitely agree.
on this
with
earth,
you.
right?
Yeah.
Busari pointed out earlier that we have people from other countries that work here, and so a lot of times the language barrier really can be difficult for our staff to kind of like get through that part of it. If you've never come across somebody who's from another country, you know, you're not, what might be some barriers for that person? If you've never come across somebody from another country before, what do you think would be some of those barriers in your communication with them?
Well, we kind of go through our barriers every day with some of the languages that we go through. So
Okay.
we don't have interpreters for all the languages. So where somebody has a dialect that we don't know, and you could see their struggles, and you try to figure out like, what can I do so they can communicate? It's sometimes a real struggle to figure out how to get over that barrier.
What have you done to get over that barrier? Or
Like
what have they done? What have you seen?
one of the things I've asked if they feel comfortable with calling a family member that can actually translate what they want to say.
And how did that work out?
It worked actually pretty well. Pretty
Okay.
well. I kind of like sent home a letter
Mm-hmm.
to give to their family member, and their family member was able to respond that way.
I know sometimes too visual prompts is something that we'll do.
Mhm.
So it's, like it's verbal, and usually English and Spanish, or, written in English and Spanish, or verbal in English and Spanish, but then pictures as well. Especially with some of the jobs that they're doing, it's not like the jobs you're doing here, where there's a lot of knowledge base behind it, so it's like, okay, these are good, these are not good, so it can be visuals that are helpful, and the same with safety requirements. Hey, these are your you know, your required equipment, you know, this, you know, those types of things.
Right.
So I think that as well as just examples, you know, of others do well.
Some good examples, thank you for sharing. How about, sorry, do you have anything that you want to add to that, or any experiences with that?
Yeah, at first when I got here, I was having a problem with T-Mobile, and then I called the customer service. The lady was like, "Oh, sir, I couldn't understand you. What is in your original language?" I said, "French. So would you be comfortable speaking of French with somebody?" I said, "Yes." And they went to get somebody to interpret whatever I was saying. But when they start talking and then we keep going, I kind of feel that it's better for me to speak English with that lady than listen to him try to tell me what she was saying. Because she says the things, and then what he's telling me is completely different.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Is that because of like, did the person not know the material? Is that why, do you think? Or is that because, like, certain words in French mean one thing and something different in English?
I don't know exactly, but I will say that since the interpreter was he also learned French. It's not like his first language or something like that. So sometimes learning something and try to translate it from another language to that language is So I was like, oh, you know what? Let's just do English and put him on.
I've experienced the same issue with Spanish, you know, because different dialect, you know, so like someone that's from Mexico speaks much different Spanish than someone that's from Puerto Rico.
But
and they sometimes can't even completely understand, which I was like, wow, okay.
And then people confuse Spanish and Portuguese.
Right.
Oh, yes, all the time.
They're not the same language.
Yeah, all the time.
And I said before that we do have a lot of people that are from Africa, and the amount of dialects that are present in Africa, it's incredible, because you can have somebody from Ghana, two people are from Ghana, but one person is from a city in Ghana and another person is from a rural area in Ghana, and they have different dialects. So it's just really, I mean, there can be some serious barriers there on how to do that. Can I ask you, how did that make you feel when you were on the phone with them and he was trying to tell you in French and you could hear her saying in English? Like, how did that make you feel, if you would be so kind as to share that with us?
Well, to me it was like, I don't think that I need somebody to be translated. Maybe the problem was that the lady cannot understand me, but I do understand her.
Sure.
I understand her, but I didn't know back then how exactly to express what I wanted to say. So my questions and all that, she couldn't get answers. She doesn't know exactly what I'm trying to say to her. So even that guy, when I say something in French, him was saying it back in English. Is like, I don't think that's what I'm trying to ask her.
Yeah.
You know, and then by the end it was like, okay, you know what, I just go to the store or something like that. Maybe I figured out that the face-to-face might be more helpful than being on the phone.
Okay. I would feel very frustrated. I know that.
Oh, it was funny to me though.
It was funny to you?
Yeah, it was funny. I don't know.
And you're like, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
Does anyone else have any examples of barriers? Anything on the list here? If you would like to share personally, professionally, any time when that had come up in your life?
Yeah, I can share something else. I don't know if one of you ever been in England. You've been in England? No?
No. I would like to. It's on my bucket list.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
I was there, and then that's it. First of all, in Africa, Togo, my country, we do learn British English. So it's completely different than American English. But when I got here, I lost that. It's like now it's the American and how we say things and those are. So when I went back there, the lady had lost my luggage. And then she was like, your luggage with you. I thought, huh? So I was there like, what are you saying? He was like, yeah, you are American.
Because you cannot do it.
I was like, oh my God, are we speaking English?
And just in this country, how many dialects we have, and sometimes it's very hard to understand someone from the deep south or the deep Midwest or north, you know, or Pittsburgh.
Boston.
Aw.
Ewans. Ewans. Ewans what? Is that somebody's name?
Yeah.
Ewans? Is that a name?
Anyone else? Have any sort of experience with barriers in communicating? I'm just looking at the list myself.
Maybe the assumption.
The assumptions.
Every time you say something, they say something different. Like you tell them a simple things, and
Uh-huh.
they think enough
Right,
for bigger things. So
right.
and then you kind of feel like, I think that you can just think, shut up. So prefer to stop talking or something.
Yeah, that would, if I said something and somebody said something different, I think that I would get frustrated after a while too. I wouldn't be able to communicate with that person. That would definitely be a barrier. I think perception for me, if I might jump in here, is something I think about. I think of when you're in an argument and you're seeing, well, I perceive it being like a tiny little thing, like, baby, you didn't empty the dishwasher this morning. So now I have to empty it before we go to, something tiny, but then my husband can see it as something much larger than that, well, you just told me that I didn't empty the dishwasher this morning, and last night you were telling me that the laundry has to be done, and this has to be done, and your car needs an oil change, like all these different things. So his perception is that I'm piling stuff on top of him, and then that's when we get into an argument, when I'm just making conversation, forgot to load the dishwasher. You can get it.
Thank you. Okay.
Pardon me?
I said he brought his own list.
His wife?
No, my wife, I didn't know she was a caller, I think, bigger than us. So.
Thank you all for sharing. If we could turn, I'm sorry I don't have my participant guide open, to the next page where it says, "Don't let these monsters rule your head."
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Could I get some volunteers for that? Go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
Assumption. Don't assume that you know what others think, feel, and want. Instead of making generalizations, try making observations. Ask questions.
Arrogance. Don't believe that you are above others and do not need their input. Instead, seek out their opinions, ideals, and expertise.
Indifference. Don't be indifferent to what others know, feel, and want. Instead, ask them what they know, feel, and think, and you may find a pot of gold.
Control. Finding a common ground is a two-way street. Don't be afraid to empower others. Through collective knowledge, you increase your influence. Okay.
I like those two. Thank you. So in indifference and control, one of the things here at Prospectus Barco that we talk about is that we work with adults with intellectual disabilities. And every year we have to sit down with the individual, their case worker from the county, ourselves, family members, things like that, and we have meetings. They're called individualized service plan meetings. And we always talk about what are some things that they want to learn in the next year, what do they want to work on, and sometimes you see people get stuck in a rut where they think that they know what's best for that person without asking them. So they're making those assumptions that they, oh well, you know, Johnny wants to learn how to take out the trash. And nobody asked Johnny, do you really want to learn how to take out the trash? So we see that happen quite a bit. Or, you know, they're adults, so but they have intellectual disabilities. So your natural instinct is to protect them, to kind of help control their environment, and you can't do that. You know, so we have to talk about limiting our need for control over that when it's a violation of their rights, their human rights. You know, nobody controls, Matt, what you eat for breakfast. But if you all of a sudden came to a house and they said, okay, nope, you can't have muffins anymore for breakfast. You have to have 3 egg whites and 2 pieces of cantaloupe every day. How would that make you feel?
I guess like someone's trying to control you, maybe a little bit out of control.
Yeah. You know, so I mean, it's things like that. So we encourage the staff instead to ask the participants, Bonnie, what do you want to learn this year? What do you want to work on? What's something you want to do with your life? And we come up with some pretty awesome stuff. You know, so that's some way to bring it back. You know, you make these assumptions on these individuals, and you're missing a lot of what they think, what they know, what they can understand. You know, it doesn't give you a good relationship with them, right? How do you think that would hinder your relationship with somebody if they just assumed, Heather, that they knew everything about you and they made these decisions without your input? Well, Heather is going to learn how to tie her shoes today, and that's it. For the next year, that's what she's going to work on, learning how to tie her shoes.
It will shut me down.
Right?
It's going to be like, okay, well, you figure out, just let me know. Doesn't allow me to grow.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else have any experiences where you come up against assumptions, arrogance, indifference, control?
We really make assumptions all day long, actually. Subconsciously and consciously, you know, we're thinking about, not thinking about. We do this thousands of times a day.
I think management in a whole is very hard because you think your direction is to control the environment. So you're like, no, I say do this, versus understanding that, yes, we want them to do it, but you still have to have them buy into what you need to get done.
Right.
But we just want to control the situation. Look, this is what I expect of you, this is what you need to do, period. But it doesn't create the environment that says, I want to do that, I want to do well.
The world is so much easier. They just do it my way.
Right.
Right? Everything would just run smoother if you just did it the way I'm telling you to do it.
And then they have the assumption that this person's not doing it based on that they just don't want to do it. No, you just didn't inspire them. You shut it down, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we look at the next page, respecting differences? Would you like me to take a couple here since you guys keep reading and or would you like to continue going this route?
We can continue.
Okay, I'll read can I read the first paragraph? Does that work?
Go for it.
Okay. So respecting differences. When others don't see life through our lens, we might interpret their ideas as strange, weird, or just plain wrong. Learning about the various ways people communicate can enrich our lives, decrease biases, and strengthen the workplace environment. Below are a few guidelines that will certainly help.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Thank you.
Take the time to get to know who is beneath the outside facade. Seek to find commonalities.
Challenge stereotypes. Every culture and community has its strengths and weaknesses. No one is immune. If you grew up with stereotypes, turn off the old tapes in your head and focus on the strengths others bring to the table.
Stop, suspend judgment and try to look at a situation as an outsider. Respect others' choices and honor their opinions.
Listen actively and empathetically. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and explore a new territory.
Seek first to understand. Try to develop an understanding of another's point of view rather than getting impatient or defensive.
Don't assume there's only one right way, yours, to communicate. Keep questioning your assumptions about how to communicate. The words you use, the body language you exhibit, what is acceptable in one culture may be aggressive in another.
Can I just stop right there? I like that what is acceptable in one culture may be aggressive in another, and that brings us back to the story that Pusari shared with us the other day about eye contact,
Yeah.
right? That to him, when all of a sudden you come to a country that we're all aggressive, but that's not how it is. And here in America, if you're not making that eye contact, that's our signal of body language that somebody is disinterested. Right? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Heather.
Ask for clarification. If you are unsure what someone meant or their intention, ask. Share what you are feeling or thinking can also help each of you understand how behaviors, attitudes, and actions do not always translate appropriately.
Respect personal space. Some cultures prefer close contact while others honor more personal space. Be mindful of other people's body language and respect their needs.
Smile, say please, thank you, and excuse me. Common courtesy translates equally in all culture and the communities.
Takes you back to kindergarten, right? Use your manners. I'm always on my kids before I hand them a drink.
What do you say?
I don't even say, what do you say? I hand it to them and I don't let go until they say thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, it's so bad. My son is just like, whenever he sneezes, I can't be on, Mom, excuse me, bless you. Like, he won't let me die. Like, Mom, did you not hear me sneeze? Sorry, bless you.
I have my mom, when we were growing up, if we didn't say God bless you when she sneezed, she would be like, oh, God bless you, Mom. Oh, well, thank you so much. Oh, right. Sorry, Mom. Bless you. Okay. And then this last page talks about using email to communicate effectively, since we are all professionals and we do have to use email. It has become a regular and acceptable mode of workplace communication in today's environment. While email has many positive uses and has saved many businesses countless hours of unproductive time, it has also a downside, which can create chaos and confusion. Now, your emails reflect your professionalism and attention to detail. Below are a few good tips to consider when choosing to use email to communicate with coworkers and customers. Matt?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Before choosing to use email, ask yourself, can I ensure a clear and concise message by email, or could my message be misinterpreted? Will using email open the door for more questions? Can I ensure that my message will not be perceived as aggressive, offensive, biased, or discriminatory? If you are unsure of your response to any of the questions above, the above questions, pick up the phone or request a face-to-face meeting. There's nothing more frustrating than email responses to create more questions or make you question the sender's motivation. Do not let someone else interpret your intention or tone.
Email etiquette. Write emails if you are using company letterhead. Make sure this subject line is readable and understandable, or readily understandable. Tag emails with the appropriate level of urgency, but do not alleviate a sense of urgency unless a rapid response is truly needed. Be clear and concise, efficient and thoughtful. Use the highest level of courtesy in your opening and closing. Check your grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Avoid long sentences to avoid losing the reader. Keep language gender neutral. Do not assume that email gives you the right to be informal with everyone. Answer all the questions and preempt further questions if possible. This shows your attention to detail and professionalism. Read and reread your email before sending to determine if your message is clear and concise. Update subject line to reflect changes in content when emails are bouncing back and forth between senders and recipients. If you create an email with when you are angry or upset, don't press send. Save it as a draft for 24 hours. If the meaning and tone sound appropriate when you read it the next day, press the send key. Otherwise, make adjustments before sending.
Thank
Don't
you.
send it all. Oh, sorry.
Bonnie?
Respond as quickly as possible. Once an email leaves your primary page, it can become forgotten. Business emails should be responded to within 24 hours, preferably the same working day. If you need to secure additional information, acknowledge the email request and let the sender know that you will get back to them as soon as possible with information requested. A lack of response from you is frustrating for the sender and can mean loss of business in the future.
If you are relying several pieces of information, consider sending a multiple email each with only one or two items of importance which are listed in the subject box. If the reader has to read a lengthy email, you increase the risk of the reader missing a critical point of information. Okay.
And do not send confidential information via email. One of the things that I like to keep in mind, and it's really difficult for me, is that they're just words on a page. There's no tone to it. There's no underlying anything, you know? So if they're just words, that's what it's supposed to be. But then as you're reading it, you're like, oh, no, she does he really think, what does he think my job is? But that's not what they're saying, right? It's literally just words on a page.
Stop trying to assume.
I've got to ask, how many fake arguments have you gotten in your head over somebody's email that's sent?
Very many.
Right? Same thing with texting. There's no tone. It's just words on a screen. That's what you try to tell yourself. Thank you all for your participation. I really appreciate it. Before we go, could we please go around the room and share about something that you learned? I think we started with Matt last time, so sorry if you would like to start us off. I'd really appreciate that.
Okay. I think what I learned today is that we can use different words to say the same thing, and also things that block the communication is the assumption we went through some words. There is so many things that will make have a bad communication, so we should try to avoid some of those stuff that the fear or assumption or something like that. And that's what I got from
Thank you.
the class.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Well, my reading out loud has digressed considerably over the last couple months. I have to go figure that out. I'm not sure what happened, but
Usually because you're the facilitator, that's why.
maybe. Yeah. It's like writing skills when you're on the computer too much.
Oh, right.
I learned that, we all have fears, and that if we acknowledge our fear and figure out a way to get through them, that we can communicate better and understand what's going on.
I think I learned that there's a lot of barriers to communication. Helping to know and understand those barriers can help us be better communicators. and try not to assume what others may know. Try to be more inclusive of getting their feedback.
Thank you. Thank you everyone again for your participation and involvement. Don't forget that list of words is coming from Heather in 2 to 3 days. And please also remember how verbal and nonverbal communication can affect our accountability and trust in the workplace as well as our personal lives. Have a great week, guys.
So take a couple minutes and write notes. Did we do this the other day? Do we know what the number one word is, the number one barrier? Do you guys know what the number one barrier is? We didn't do this the other day?
No, I don't think we did
What
we?
do you think it is?
I would say fear.
The number one barrier?
Yeah, the number one selected barrier.
I'd say fear as well. I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would think too. If you are scared and you think about, it's not that.
How about you?
I'll just go with the consensus.
Aw,
Don't do that. Don't do that.
it is fear.
It is
And-
fear.
Yeah, because
And the hardest part for people is the fear of being shut down, when they go to talk with someone to ask a question. They're afraid to ask a question because they don't want to interrupt someone. They don't want to get their, head.
Because it's like
Yeah, get
everything
off.
kind of wraps into the fear.
Yeah.
All of those things.
yeah.
I don't have the knowledge, so I'm fear. I'm assuming what they're gonna say. I'm afraid of what they're gonna say, My
Yeah.
perception of what it is, it intimidates me, so I'm afraid to speak up.
So that's why the personal accountability is so critical for them to get the understanding, a clear understanding of it, because if you are a person who takes personal accountability and your boss or whoever that you ask the question of has their door shut or their door open, doesn't matter, and they're working on something and you need to interrupt them, it really becomes the person who is the interrupter's responsibility to say, or ask the question, is this a good time?
Mhm.
It's not the recipient's responsibility to say, this is not a good time.
Right.
And when you can get that to change in your organization, that concept, I'm using that as an example, but it's the whole concept of that, of being able to ask a question that breaks down that barrier, then it's incredible what comes next, how well things work, how well communication will work.
Mhm.
How do you think it went?
I'm still getting that line between facilitator and teacher under my, my more fluid. I did catch myself a couple of times doing stuff that you had pointed out. Stupid pens. I caught myself a couple times and I was like, put it down, just let it go. I worked really hard not to say things like perfect, great, good, and use a lot of thank yous. And for me, my perfects, greats, goods aren't any different than I'm just trying to vary my words of thanking somebody from their input. So I think I struggled with that a little bit. For this lesson, there's a lot that the facilitator is supposed to explain and talk about. And not being like completely comfortable with the material. I wish I knew like this a little bit better, so I could like stop and talk more about it. I did stop at one point, but I felt like we could have really dived into some good conversation there had I been more comfortable with the material. So that's something that I'm looking forward to improving. So,
Was there?
can you go first, please?
Oh, you want me to?
Yes, I want you to go first, please. Thank you.
I think you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
The explaining the purpose and the assignments, it was good, but
It can be better.
it could be a little better.
Okay.
Asking questions, I thought the acknowledgement of participants for their input was excellent.
Thank you.
Plus plus.
Thank you.
You varied the tone and expression, but you can see you're still a little, that you're still learning, so you can see that. And I think what'll happen is you'll become more animated as you get more familiar with the material.
Yeah.
Great reference back to Basari's example during the supplemental reading. Huge improvement with facilitation from teaching. You wanna try and give the participants the why on the list.
It's over here now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Why we're going after the same number for the same number of words
I missed that connection.
from one, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So the reason for that is because it's so, in a sense, easy to describe a piece of candy, and yet to show how difficult it is to describe words that hold us back from good communication.
Right.
So people struggle with it, so at least, it gives them something to shoot for. Okay, so you have 17 down there, all right, so we're looking for 17 words. So you want to draw the analogy, and it's in the book how you do that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the explanation's there.
Okay.
And you don't need to reprimand yourself.
When I'm talking.
Because we don't know.
Well, no, but I know. So is this
Yeah.
balancing back
But we
and forth
won't know.
between them. Right.
We wouldn't know that.
Right. So. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I thought you did a great job as well.
Thank you.
I think the flow in the beginning part maybe was a little slower than what, you know what I mean? Because it was like we spent a lot of time on the beginning, and then like there was a lot of content after, so that's just something maybe, just as far as spreading it out, and that's my opinion, but the only other negative thing was that if you do catch yourself doing something, like Bonnie said, don't even recognize it.
Right.
Because we wouldn't have really recognized it if you don't recognize it.
Right.
I think it was excellent.
Thank you.
Great job.
Oh, me?
Oh, sorry, jumping in. All right. Okay.
Oh, no, she look at me now. Okay, yeah, I think overall, that was good. Like, Marty says it, from the beginning, I kind of feel that, I don't know, we spend a lot of time talking about all that. I was asking myself, where are we going with this? I was going to start asking questions. Yeah, well, so that was good.
And Heather, last one. I was like, wait, who's next?
No, I think you completed the lesson. unlike, I did. But, probably from you, I would just act like, it felt long, right? That you
Yeah,
kind
but
of
it was an hour. I made sure and that's why I was like,
No.
okay. I was gonna stop before we got to the email, and I'm like, no, you got to keep going. It's not an hour yet. I'm like, okay.
But I felt like, there wasn't it felt like we were just kind of reading, kind of get through the material, kind of doing that versus being involved in the material a bit. And, just for myself, I'm just like wondering, how would I kind of change that that vibe where I feel like we're just, let's just read the material to kind of get through the material. But I think you covered it. I think I learned. I felt that you was kind of favoring Vasario, and because you called him out a lot, so I thought you was kind of favoring him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair
But
enough.
because y'all used a lot of experiences for you too, and I think it's just like you and me are kind of the same when it comes to like we're so used to like teaching. Like
Right.
I'm gonna share so that we can incorporate the environment, but it's
Right.
hard because
Yeah.
it's very hard. Just like okay, let me shut up and let them talk. But I'm the same way. I do the exact same thing. Like I feel like me talking about the situation versus me just facilitating it is helping it. But I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. Thanks for your insight, guys. I really appreciate it.
Going through the supplemental readings, you're not always gonna have the opportunity to do that. If you have the opportunity and you have that 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it's a gift. Take it as a gift. Because most of the time you won't have that opportunity and the supplemental readings get shelved.
Right.
And there's so much good information in there. So if you have the opportunity to read any of them as a group, consider the fact that when you have 12 to 15 people in the room and everybody's reading another piece, it's easy to jump in with a question and say, so what do you think about that? Or did you ever get into
It's not
that?
the intent that we had to go through all of it, because that's why I kind of, when she was
No.
up, I felt like you felt like you had to go through all of it, right?
Right. Well, yeah, because we all got
Right,
you know,
kinda didn't
you know,
go
you
there.
have to go through it. Okay,
So
we'll go
it
through
would
it.
have been nice if we kind of like stopped and kind of, allowed us a little bit more conversation flow
Yeah.
with it. Okay.
And
So
I
that's
tried
the
to do that
intent,
here
right.
and there, but then I was like, maybe I'm doing that wrong. Maybe
Right.
we shouldn't. Maybe we should just get through the reading. And Bonnie is so good at not giving us anything when we're up here. So
Right,
she was
trying
giving
to
me
find
no
that-
cues.
Just
So I was
trying to
like,
find that balance.
we're gonna
So
keep going.
so the intent with the supplement reading is to kind of add the downtime. But if we get so engaged into what we're learning, it's okay.
Yeah, because when you go through the list of words on this particular exercise,
You're
a
gonna
lot
have
of
twice that
times,
many.
what's that?
You're gonna have twice as many words.
You're gonna
because
have
you're gonna
twice
12
as-
to 15.
Right, you know,
people.
twice as many words, and if and when you want to ask, what do you guys think is the number one, or what's the number one word on this list to you? And 9 out of 10 times they're gonna say fear. That can open up a whole door of additional discussion that'll come about, and so you may or may not, but just because the supplemental reading is listed as an assignment, you don't need to keep it as an assignment. You
Okay,
can
so we could.
incorporate it.
Okay.
You can incorporate it,
Right.
and or you can incorporate one page of it and just get their feet wet.
Right.
And say, but, we do want you to read this. It's in there they're in there for a reason.
Right.
And we do want people to read it and have an experience from it.
Right.
Right. So I think it's definitely good reading material, but that's where I was kind of like,
Yeah,
if she didn't feel kind of forced to read the whole thing, we could have had more engaging conversations about some of the material that we went over.
Right. Right. And then is it like possible, and this might sound silly asking the body, but I'm just curious, like, are we allowed to like move this around? So like if we're talking, and I like the don't let the monsters rule your head aspect of this lesson, like could I like slide that in somewhere where I think it fits better rather than being the supplemental part of the reading?
if there's an appropriate segue to do that based on the conversation that's happening in the group, you can take a piece of that or that particular one and plug it in, you know, turn to the supplemental reading, let's read this for a minute and talk about it.
Okay.
You don't need to go around and have everybody read, you can say, let's take 3 or 4 minutes and can everybody please read through this and we're gonna discuss it.
Okay.
That takes less time than having everybody read a piece.
Right.
Okay, so that's another option.
Okay. Yeah.
You can read it quietly and we're gonna talk about this in a minute.
Right.
And
But
then
it,
just call on people.
yeah. And knowing when that might like pop up is going to be difficult at first because we're not very familiar with the material. So like when you're hearing the
Yeah.
conversation and stuff like that, you know, maybe like the second or third time I'm like, oh right, I can really pop that in there.
This list, building this list is extremely powerful. And you'll start to recognize it when you're working with your own people.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't wanna, you do wanna shortchange the candy side. And in fact, I wouldn't, you know, like I know it was just cause we were a small group, you asked about, do you mind if I add one?
Right.
But if you're in a full-size group, you're not gonna want to
Mm-hmm.
add any.
Right.
And you want the candy part of that to go really quick.
Okay.
You wanna spend your time on the what holds us back.
The barriers.
Right.
Got it.
So if somebody says, well, you know, if they only wanna offer one word, fine, take it.
Okay.
Let it go.
Yeah, because the book says 2, so I was like,
Right,
all
2 per
yeah.
person, well, you figure that's 30.
Yeah.
And you're gonna come up with 30 words on the other side.
Right.
That's the important side of the paper.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, don't focus on the candy,
Sure. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thanks.
But it gets them aligned with, you know, we're doing the and then we're moving into what's really important,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Okay.
Alright, good job. Alright, so let's break for lunch, and Matt, we're gonna hard start at 10 after for you, if that's,
Okay.
is that enough time, guys, or do you want quarter after?
Yeah, how about quarter?
Quarter after? Okay, let me shut this off. Ready?
You guys, I'm loving this communication that we're having back and forth in our class today. I've got another situation that I want to throw at you guys to see what you can come up with, okay? So if you could follow along in your books, and my facilitator guides 136.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a small group of individuals at work who have a tendency to gossip about processes, procedures, and other employees. You used to join them, but you decided it wasn't in your best interest anymore, and the gossip is starting to wear on you, and you'd like it to stop. Gossip in the workplace. Always a hot button topic, huh?
Yes.
So what concerns you most about this situation as the person who left the group of gossipers? What concerns you most?
Are they gonna think I'm too good?
Okay, thank you.
Really a gossip about me now.
Thank you.
Why they left?
Say again?
Why they left the group?
Why I left the group?
Yeah, I mean, is it the question that we asking ourselves why we did it, or the other person is asking to know why?
No. The concern is now, what concerns you most about the fact that you have now left this group of gossipers
Oh, okay.
that talk about policies, procedures, other employees, the company? What would concern you about leaving a group of people like that used to be part of? God bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not getting anything.
You're not getting anything? That's... Thank you.
Maybe that they don't include you any longer, too.
Okay.
I mean, you're sort of left out, you know,
Okay.
sure.
Thank you. These are all good. Thank you, guys. Should you speak up in this situation?
Yes.
to say.
Why?
I think I should speak to them.
Okay. Speak to them. How? Heather. You better not be talking about me now that I left this group.
Speak to them and saying, wow, since I was part of the group, I was like, I realized that, this is wrong. We're not doing anything to benefit. So maybe if I'm speaking up about the situation and being a part of the situation, I could help, defer their energy somewhere else.
Thank you. Sorry?
Like, speak up, I will say yes or no. She say yes, and now she come back to me and then it's telling me that I left this group because of or so. And then now everybody will be against you. They're gonna be like, if they hear something, it's like someone from the office or from the higher management, they're gonna be like, oh, Heather is the one who reported.
Which is why I would speak directly to them, giving them the opportunity to kind of change. Because I was a part of it, I didn't say anything in it. Now that I have this realization, I want to give them opportunity to maybe come to that realization. So I'm with him, like, I wouldn't report it to the management necessarily, unless it was some direct impact on the company.
What would the benefit of speaking up be?
Changing the atmosphere.
I think there could be multiple benefits.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe if the approach is, when you speak up, that it's more of, okay, I understand that you guys have some issues, because I'm aware of them, because I was right there with you. What do you think we might be able to do to help resolve the issues? Can we use some of this attention, some of this frustration to help resolve the issues? So maybe you can benefit them at the same time as benefiting the whole company culture by trying to address the issues that they're gossiping about.
Yes, thank you. So address the issues.
Maybe with management or supervisors or collectively, and then you could sort of take that, to sort of be not really part of their group, but a bystander that can take some of those concerns, and maybe some of them are your concerns too.
You said a word in there the first time that I really liked because it links it back to accountability. It starts with a B. Do you remember what it was? It's okay if you don't.
I don't.
Brainstorm. You asked them to brainstorm.
Oh, okay.
You said brainstorm with them.
Right.
Which then puts the ball back in their court for the accountability aspect of it. Yes, they're doing this stuff, and you used to be a part of it, but now I'm not, so let's figure out how to get you guys involved in not doing it anymore.
Right.
Puts it back on them. So I liked that. Thank you for bringing that back to the accountability aspect of it. What would be the impact of keeping quiet?
You have more time to do your work. I think it's just going to eventually fester.
Yeah.
It would fester.
I think because you used to be a part of the group, you could still be associated with the group.
Okay, so guilt by association?
Yeah, as well as, maybe some or many others don't know exactly what they're doing or saying, but you do. So ultimately that connection is made. Well, hey, you knew, even if you weren't part of it, you knew. Why didn't you do something or say something?
Right, right, yeah. Mm-hmm. What about you, sorry? I see you nodding along.
Yeah, that will impact your relationship.
Impact your relationship? Sure. Who do you think, which relationship will it impact? Your relationship with these people, your relationship with others in the company.
Yeah, the first, I mean, to begin with for that group,
Uh-huh.
and then we go along with your coworkers, I mean, the one of the group that you used to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not, everybody's talking, you're not saying anything anymore, they're gonna be asking questions, it's like, okay, what's going on? This person used to be part of it, it's like now, there's a quietness, or they might be feeling like, is it like a spy now, or what, or something?
Like a spy now. So you think that the impact could then look negatively on you to other people? What do you guys think? Do you agree? Disagree?
Could.
It could? Sure. Sure. Gossip is always tricky. How might you handle the situation? So, would you be the person who speaks up? Would you personally go to them and say something? Would you only say it to one person in confidence? Like, I'm talking to Heather that night on the phone, listen, I don't think it's such a good idea for us to gossip about everything anymore, or talk about everything anymore. Like, how would you personally handle that situation?
I think if you're closer with one of the particular individuals, it may be a good litmus test to talk to them separately. Just say, hey, I'm not, I don't feel comfortable being part of the gossip any longer, and I think this, there may be solutions where we can resolve some of our issues. What do you think about that? So it may allow you to win someone else over if you're gonna confront the group, in total. So it's not like, not that they're gonna stand up right away, but you at least, vet out the situation a little bit and then try to suggest some solution. Like, hey, well, let's come up with some ideas or where we can resolve these problems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you all for participating. Have a great week.